Welcome to the Artist Eye podcast, where we dive deep into the world of creativity. You see, I've always believed that creativity holds a special place, almost like a connection to something greater, whether it's that elusive flow state or a higher power guiding our artistic journey. In this episode, I'm going to share with you a bit about the direction my creative path has led me. Creativity often takes us on this introspective journey, and the outward expression, like the art we create, can be seen as a manifestation of our inner world. It's like our emotions are a unique form of art, but they remain locked in us, invisible to others. As an artist, what I feel often finds its way onto my canvas, even if it's not immediately apparent to anyone else. I recently took a break from my podcast, a hiatus of sorts, and today I want to convey how I've been feeling during this time and what lies ahead for the podcast. It's been a time of reflection, and I've had a chance to dive into some profound topics. One of those topics is the very reason I started this podcast in the first place. What was the driving force behind it, and how has it evolved? More to the point, we'll touch on some deeply personal aspects too, like the struggles and battles, particularly when it comes to addictions. It's a topic we often shy away from, but it's an essential part of the creative journey. And then there are the emotions, the raw, intense feelings that we artists grapple with. How do they influence our work, and what's the relationship between our art and our emotional state? Lastly, we'll talk about progress. I've come to realize that some of the most profound art is born from personal growth. How does our artistic journey intertwine with personal development? We'll explore that connection. So join me on this introspective journey. I'm here to share and to learn, to connect through the lens of creativity. Right. Welcome back to the Artist Eye. The place where I talk about things usually with people, but today I'm just going to talk about me. Resonates with you somehow. I will mostly be addressing the chat towards the end of the stream for Integrity Podcast. Mic is low. We'll bring it up. Is that better? Hopefully that's better. I don't know what to tell you, Yan. So there's a quote that I wanted to start with. Quote from Gandhi. It goes, "Whatever you do in life will be insignificant, but it's very important that you do it. Because you can't ever really know what the meaning of your life is. And you don't need to." Personally, it's not a quote that sits well with me because I like to know the meaning behind the things that I'm doing. Usually very analytical and like to know, plan ahead and stuff like that, which is, why this stuff is always such a mess, because things don't go accordingly, and when things don't go as planned, that's generally when suffering comes in. So yeah, we have a couple different sort of topics. They're all related to a creative line or creative path that's been brought through. I'm gonna go back here this way. So, sorry, I'm not as prepared as I'd like to be. This podcast is going to take a lot of editing. We're going to start with, actually, while we're here, before we start, I have these Artist Eye podcast, very exclusive, very limited postcards. Yeah, they are limited to 20. 19 now. 19 of these postcards are available. If you donate $10 via PayPal, the link below, you can get your very own handwritten postcard from the Artist Eye podcast. So anyway, enough of that aside. Talking about the podcast and the reason why I started it and the reason why I left and the reason why I'm coming back. So, this podcast exists for very interesting reasons. I don't know if many podcasts exist for the same reason. I would be curious to find out. This is one of the reasons why I also interview podcasters and not just artists. I do think of podcasters as creatives, and there's lots of different types of work that goes into hosting a podcast. It's not just about hosting it, unless you have an entire team. You're Joe Rogan, you just sit down and talk and do whatever. But if you're not Joe Rogan, you probably have a lot of work to do on your own, like that you have to do. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. My friend Duncan, he almost all the time when we're speaking, he's working on some kind of intro for his podcast. So it's his intros are very creative, very interesting. So if you've never heard a DTFH intro, I recommend you check it out. Podcasters are their own form of creative being, and I think that it's definitely a form of art. So the reason that I find my podcast interesting, or at least the reason why it's started, is because it was very selfish. As I just spoke about Duncan, I became familiar with his podcast after watching The Midnight Gospel on Netflix. I've spoken to this about this at length before, and it made me want to know more about a lot of things. I think most specifically myself made me want to know more about myself. And I was definitely pushed back to aspects of finding myself and looking inward because of some of the ideas that were put forward in that show. Now, it wasn't immediately that I decided to start a podcast. Although I did think shortly after, like, it was brought about by the show itself. And speaking to Duncan shortly afterwards, and it set forward a domino effect of creative behavior for me. But it also set in motion the stepping stones of personal growth. And where it showed me the path that I would need to walk. And often, as I tried to state earlier, an artistic or creative path leads us to look. It often leads to an intrinsic sort of place where we look inside ourselves and we see these emotions that are relatively invisible to others, but very, very present for us, for yourself, for an individual. These feelings are very prominent. And I guess what I was getting to, for the most part, was that since the beginning, there's been a selfish thrust with every creative endeavor that I've undergone. So with my podcast, it was not just curiosity, but a desire to know more people. I guess it was like thinking that I could get like a foot in the door or something. Hey, if I start a podcast, then I can talk to Duncan Trussell. One-on-one. Wouldn't that be nice? So you can see there how that might be a selfish reason to start a podcast. And it's not just like Duncan that I wanted to talk to. There's a lot of musicians that I wanted to speak to one-on-one, some of whom are friends who I probably could have just asked to sit down with and talk about their music in the same way, but I never really just did that. So a lot of the value that comes out of, or rather a lot of the value that came from the past interviews come from a selfish place. And I'm sitting there asking questions that I want to know the answers to, not because I want everybody else to know the answers, but because I wanted to know the answers. Now, I don't know whether, especially for a podcast, that's a selfish thing. But I feel like, for myself, that came from a selfish place. There can be reasons that selfishness is good, and if the way that I exploited my selfishness for the betterment of others makes it a less selfish thing, then I suppose that justifies it. But I still feel like it was a selfish act. Considering that I mentioned Duncan earlier, I feel that it's only fair to give him a shout out and let although he's no better. I have been off the cigarettes that he so graciously helped me off of for a while, but I'm still vaping, and no help to him, he's still vaping too. Latest. But at least I'm not on cigarettes anymore, so that's a step in the right direction. Some progress, right? Question, Moo. Selfish to which self? Right? Selfish to which self? The false self or the true self? So I would say it was selfish to the egoic self. So that would be the false self. Because it was an egoic thing. It was definitely looking out for me and being selfish in that way. I was thinking of myself as number one in that scenario. The true self wants to be the one that shares and expresses with others, which is, I guess, realistically, the reason behind the selfishness in the first place. So There you go. That's kind of what I was just trying to say. If you are aware of the true self, then selfishness loses its meaning in regards to the... Very true. So therefore, I guess it came from a selfish place, out of selfish reprimand, and it became a less selfish thing. Although the person giving, or whatever you want to say, me, I felt selfish. I still do about it. But thank you for making that point, because it as it so happens, value lies in that, and value's sort of what we value. And artistically, it's a very beautiful way to look at selfishness. It's kind of the idea of this whole thing. I'm trying to look for my next topic here. Okay, so now that we've covered selfishness, I wanted to talk about some of my addictions and some of the work that I've been some of my life that I've been living in order to get rid of the naughty things. So I have a few addictions. Some we'll leave off the table for now, as I don't want to be kicked off of Twitch or anything for saying anything I shouldn't be saying. But so I do have, I'm not going to say I did have, because I do have, currently still dealing with it, a marijuana dependency, which is also known as weed addiction for some, pot smoke. So I am many people that know me will say that I have a very sharp sense of self-awareness. As Moo just pointed out, you know, if you are aware of certain things, they either lose meaning or gain meaning based on your awareness of them. And when it comes to addiction, I'm very on my toes about knowing where I am, knowing where I stand, and I'm not on my toes when it comes to control. I lose my temper very easily, and it gets hard for me to control myself when I'm, I guess, detoxing or coming down from some things. Personally, specifically, I'm talking about the weed smoke. If I haven't had a joint, I can get very irritable. I can get upset, and I can make others upset by being upset. And yeah, so for one, it makes me lazy. It makes me procrastinate and stuff. I feel like there are aspects to it that have always helped me creatively. I think smoking a joint inspires me. I can be put into a better creative mood. So they've never been like detrimental to me, like marijuana, as far as my addiction goes. I don't feel it's ever been detrimental. I don't feel it's ever gotten in the way of any of my relationships or It has probably made me late for things. It has probably made me reschedule appointments. It has probably made me a little bit fatter than I need to be. But all in all, I think that weed is pretty harmless. That being said, I intend to quit. Or smoke it very less infrequently. Everything in moderation, right? So, with that being addressed, there's the nicotine addiction, which is something that's going to go out the window also, but this is completely... it's not going to be like every once in a while. Weed is going to be like maybe socially type thing. But nicotine for myself, I think is it's not useful. The marijuana has helped me, as Moose put across here. Marijuana has helped me deal with some stress and trauma, coping. But cigarettes helped me cope when I was younger, when I shouldn't have been smoking them, when it was frowned upon. Now it's still kind of frowned upon, but just societally frowned upon. It's not. Back then it was taboo. Now it's just seen as something you shouldn't do, and it's understood that it's unhealthy. So I just don't really want to do it anymore. The thing about nicotine is it is a real addiction, and regardless of how much it doesn't look like an addiction, it can very much look like an addiction. Little bottles lying around my house of these little things and these little friggin' pods. Gross. It's kind of gross. It's not as bad as cigarettes. I mean, I used to have ashtrays overflowing with cigarette butts around my room. One of my first computers, when it was recycled, we took it apart to see if we could salvage any of the CD drive or whatever. And we found cigarette butts in it. And, yeah, looking back, that was disgusting. I don't know how those cigarette butts got in there. But apparently somebody was using it as an ashtray. You live and you learn. So, nicotine will be being cut out of life, and marijuana will be being cut back on. So some other addictions that I learned about over this hiatus that I had taken was... some people have issues with external addictions. Some people seek validation, and that's sort of like an addiction. You need validation, like a validation addiction. And a lot of people that have those kinds of addictions seek it from social media, so they endlessly scroll social media to get likes, and others have self-harm addictions and self-injury addictions where they cut themselves for one reason or another. And although it can be considered like I don't know where I was going with what that was, but it's generally an addiction. I'm just going to say, although it can be considered like a mental diagnosis, somebody, like, hypothetically, you could claim that somebody who cuts himself is needs mental help, which I don't find is fair. I think somebody who might hurt themselves needs to have somebody to talk to, a friend or something. But that's beside the point. What we're talking about is external addictions. And mine was, let's come back to this in 1 second. During this hiatus, I explored a project led by a very well-known artist. Goes by the name of David Cho. And David Cho would often remind us of these little intrinsic aspects that have to do with personal growth that link to our creativity. And one of the things that he would remind me of, not me specifically, but everybody in this community, was that hurt people hurt people. And this is where we're going with my addiction. I found that as a hurt person, I would hurt people. And through that, I found it was an addiction for me to get what I wanted from certain people. Not everybody. It was very few people. I'd often tell friends of mine, if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me. And this is kind of what I was referring to. I knew that there were certain aspects of me that were devious or hurtful that if certain people knew about, they would reject me, or at least that's a presumption of myself. That's me projecting, I guess. But as it were, I realized that I was using myself as a weapon by saying that I would hurt myself if I couldn't get what I wanted. And that was not fair to those around me. And although I don't think any of them are listening, I'm sorry. Over the past 3 years, beginning 4 years, I think. About 4 years ago, my moving from addiction to life stuff. Let's see if we can ease this over. So through realizing that I had this problem, I developed a way of going into my awareness to notice my other issues. And it's not unobvious what this next one is. If you know me, you'll know where this is going to go. I have 2 children with my former partner. 4 years ago, verging on 5, maybe. My oldest son was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And Duchenne is basically a terminal illness. Muscular dystrophy is not a terminal disease, but Duchenne is basically a death sentence. And so when the doctor sat us down and told us that our son would probably not see 30, that really hurt. And I don't think it was that destroyed my relationship. Definitely the selfishness and the attacking people with my words and being cold that pushed people away and ruined my relationship. So I'm taking full accountability for all of it. But there were definitely aspects of that that affected me, from bleeding over from the fact that my child has a terminal illness, and we got a terminal diagnosis when he was 8 or 9. He's 12 now. So it's been very hard to sort of come to terms with the fact that I'll probably outlive my child. And watching him grow has been necessary, and I guess I didn't want to miss anything. Trying to stay present is a key aspect going forward. I won't be in his life 100% of the time anymore, so being present with him is very important. Lately I've been feeling like some aspects of my emotions are not really that important. I feel like emotionally I am driven to do things. I'm I want to make money because I want to put food on the table, because I want to feed my kids, because I love them. And there are things that like drive me to do things because of my emotions, in that sense. I love this person, therefore I will do this for them, kind of. But I don't feel like all of my actions are driven by emotion. I don't feel like most of my actions are driven by emotion. A lot of them are, specifically driven by love. And I wonder if love is actually something that we should ignore, like, in a sense. Not like, let's not work so that we don't have to put food on, like, but no, like, I'm not gonna for instance, like, go out of, like, head over heels to stretch an arm and a leg out to make an extra mile happen, kind of thing. I'm not making sense here. For me, I don't feel like emotions should sway my judgment. If I want to do something, then I'm going to do it. How I feel about it in terms of emotionally should not affect whether I do it or not. A painting, this podcast, singing a song, or playing music, cross-stitching, coloring a picture, I don't know. But if I say I'm going to paint a picture, and then I sit down and I go, I don't feel like painting a picture. I'm upset, so I don't feel like painting a picture. I think I should maybe paint a picture. Because maybe painting the picture would make me feel better. Or this is a good one. Duncan always reminds us to exercise and drink lots of water. And this is a good fight for depression. And when you're depressed, you don't want to exercise and you don't want to drink water. It's very obviously you don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that. So for depression, it's very useful to not listen to your feelings, because your feelings don't want you to do those things, and if you do them, you'll start to feel better. I know this personally from experience, because hell, I was diagnosed clinically depressed, and here I am telling you not to listen to your feelings. Probably because if you listen to your feelings, you might end up depressed. Now, I'm not telling you never to listen to your feelings. Obviously, if you feel love for somebody, you should convey that emotion right off the bat, if you can. If you feel angry at somebody that you need to let them know that you're angry, then maybe you should express your anger. But when it comes down to getting the job done, and I'll give this one last description. This podcast did not feel like doing it anymore, so I put it on hiatus. Everybody told me, oh, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't do this. I know I shouldn't have done that. I did it anyway, didn't I? But I'm back, because I should have done this anyway, and I'm aware of that. So here we are, and yeah. Oftentimes it comes down to how we think others will view us based on our decision making, and that determines how we express ourselves to others. As I said, I don't think it's necessary to accommodate cultural norms just because somebody says oh, train of thought, finding myself. Different cultures have different ways of expressing or varied expectations regarding emotional expression. And some cultures encourage emotional restraint. Others self-control, and promote open expression. And so that gives us sort of melting pot of how different people in society will behave. And again, I don't think I said this earlier, but I'm no professional. I have no degree in anything. I have no right to have anything to say about mental health. I'm just an advocate because I've suffered from a lot of mental health and I've worked through it. So, and I'm working through it. Not even, I would not say I've accomplished very much in terms of bettering my mental health or achieving goals in regards to my mental state or emotional state. Self-awareness is very important when it comes to recognizing your own involvement in the things that you can influence in your life to help make these choices. And with regards to getting the job done, the way that you convey your emotions comes down to how self-aware you are of them. That's why I say self-awareness is very important. And I found that creatively, I connect best with myself through meditation and mindfulness. So when I'm trying to be self-aware, I find that I find best connections with my creativity and creative side. Next topic. I think I kind of covered that. Going into self-awareness again. So I was going to talk about connecting with creativity, in a sense. Personally, I find, as I was saying, in meditation, I connect best with my creative juices. There's a lot of me goes into my art. When I'm expressing myself, I don't like to paint a picture that's already a picture. I like to throw paint at the canvas and see what comes out. And my joy or anger or sadness is expressed in whether I'm holding a bottle or gripping or whatever, expressed in the way that I throw the paint or the way that I apply the paint on the canvas. As an example, canvas, whatever. Internally, that process means a lot more to me than the output or the final product or whatever it ends up being. The process of how I'm doing it seems to be more important to me than why I'm doing it or what I'm doing. I feel like that comes from somewhere. It feels connected to me, but it feels like what's often referred to as the word for it is spirit, or it's the word intrinsic. It's the thing inside. Putting labels on this stuff is hard, especially when you're not prepared, let me tell you. Yeah, the process is it's the journey along the way. And that's the thing that feels like spirit, and it feels like it guides you elsewhere. At least for me. I guess this is because I don't know where. I feel like that connection to that thing, I mean, it's defined in different ways by different people, but I've heard Geezer Butler from Black Sabbath talk about it. A couple of them did, but described as coming from outside of them. It's like another member of their band enters the room through them, and that's where they get their song lyrics, and that's, they say that's what it feels like. And I mean, that's kind of in relation to making art. That's kind of how it feels, is being guided and led by something. So I feel connected to that, and I feel that it's important to feel connected to that. And I feel like making progress is the most important thing in regards to a creative journey. And if you feel that connection to that intrinsic thing, then I think there's always progress being made going forward. There you go. I like that. Practice makes progress. There is no perfect. Yeah, I have this motto. I often sort of try to convey it when I can. It's not the best to convey in super positive spaces because a lot of arguing to happen. But a lot of people like to say positive vibes only. I don't like positive vibes. I'm actually opposed to positive vibes. I like that they're positive instead of negative, of course. But I would rather be progressive vibes, because progressive vibes keep you flowing. Your positive vibes, positive energy is up here. Your negative vibes, your negative energy is down here. But progressive vibes, they just go like this, man. Just go like this, and then they're gone. So, but that's the key, is to be in the moment. That way, the progressive vibe is always there, because it's vibing, and it's progress. All right. So, unfortunately, I was completely underprepared today. I have this whole, like, it wasn't a script, but I was like going over all this like stuff about self-awareness and spirit and intrinsic value and stuff like that, and I really didn't get to touch on all of it, and I could go more into depths, but I don't really have that much time today. So I'm going to do a couple more things here, and then I'm going to open up for some questions in the chat, even though there's only a few people here. Moving forward, podcast will be remaining on Twitch for as long as possible, but there are some changes happening. I'm not going to give a time frame because I don't know when it'll happen. Excuse me. We will be dual streaming the Artist Eye podcast to Twitch and Kick. We will be on Kick soon. I'm there already, but I haven't set up stuff I need to set up, so I'll have to figure that out. The Artist Eye podcast is not fully available on all streaming services currently. The Artist Eye is only available on YouTube. You can check out 3 of the previous episodes on most streaming platforms. But I do not have a hosting service and I cannot afford it right now. Once again, I will mention Artist Eye podcast postcards. These look better than they look on the camera. I'm just under a lot of computer blue light. They're not shiny. They're just trying to get better color. It's kind of like maybe that's, I don't know. Anyway, you get the idea. It's a postcard. I'm going to send it to you if you donate $10 or more during a live stream. It doesn't have to be this one. I just have to have some left. Anyway, 1 or 2 of these is already gone. We've received a donation just at the beginning of the broadcast before the start. So yeah, we'll be going to Kick and Twitch, and then the podcast goes up on YouTube shortly after the broadcast, or within the next few days, depending on how much editing needs to happen. Moving forward, I would like to get it back on all major streaming platforms, and hopefully things will change. On Wednesday, I have Mark Borens from Adam and the Volumes. They're a Toronto band. They're releasing their first full-length LP, All For You, on October 6th. We've talked to Michael Grundy here on Artist Eye Podcast before. He is the producer and bassist / drummer for Adam and the Volumes. When I met them, he was the drummer, but they switch around. We'll be talking to Mark on Wednesday, and Mikey will be returning shortly after. In a few weeks, we have Jesse Gallagher of Apollo Sunshine. He's also a meditation teacher. He'll be joining me, I believe, in the first or second week of October. I've also got some emails out from some other people, and yeah, so I will be back in 2 days. Let's open up the chat to a couple questions. If you got any questions, I will answer some questions. And then we'll get going. I don't know. I'm going to check to see if we got a raid. We can raid anybody. Let me know if you got any questions. What's my worst fear as an egoic character in this story? What's my worst fear as an egoic character in this story? Which story? Is this story like life? I am an egoic character in this story, but I try not to let my ego get to me too much. Difficult. I mean, there's so many fears. I have so many fears. I mean, I'm not like afraid of like, I mean, yeah, I have a bit of like, I'm scared of spiders, okay? But that's not like my biggest fear. No, my biggest fear is probably related to something my biggest fear is that I won't amount to anything in my life. That's in this life, in this story, this egoic character story. That I won't have a story. That I'm just going to be another faded face in the background. I guess that's my biggest fear. And it's part of the selfishness beginning that I was talking about. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this episode is selfishness. But yeah. Any other questions? Or is that it? Wednesday at 7, Mark Borens of Adam and the Volumes from Toronto. Their album will be out October 6th. What's the true self's biggest fear? Yeah, that's a hidden one. Gotta dig for that. That I won't be enough. That leads back into a lot of that self-exploring I did with that art community. Yeah. The true self's biggest fear is that I won't be enough. I guess enough for whom is often a question, and the reply would be for anybody who would have me. I'm a bit of a people pleaser, so when it comes to like, I'm a people pleaser because I'm codependent and I think I have this need for, as I was saying before, a sort of need for validation. It's not validation so much, but it's a need to be seen. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. It's an identification with self, and the ego likes to make you think it's the self, and it's not, right? But yeah, I have just a lot of desire to be enough for somebody, like not necessarily any one body, but like if I'm in your life, I want to be enough for you or whatever. And like as a podcaster, I want to be enough for you to watch my show or for you to listen. And I don't feel like I am sometimes. So, I mean, that's a big fear. And it's not like that value is intrinsically based off the podcast. That's just a sort of a little example, I guess. Right. Dualism. Somewhere where your bag is half full and half empty, or the glass is half full and half empty at the same time. So where you're putting the bag down, but also picking it back up. You know. Anyway, I'm gonna quickly take a look to see if anybody is on that I can raid for a stream. And the only person I know is... You know what? Let's go watch Sailor Moon. Let's go watch Sailor Moon. Is it over? Not over, is it? It's just starting. Okay, Sailor Moon! Woo! Are we hosting? No, we're not hosting yet. It didn't work. Of course. Let's do this. Can I not do that? Won't you do that? There we go. Alright. Oh, believe me, I know the bigger issues there. It's underlying. It's not invisible to me. We're rating my friend's channel. He's not the streamer. It's just a retro channel. It's up 24/7 and has TV shows and a coin game. You can press !play in his chat and drop some coins, or you could just watch Sailor Moon, or you could leave. But thanks for joining me on the podcast, and I will be back on Wednesday with Mark Boren's interesting Moo Pod. I do believe that that's a choice. However, I find that it's very difficult. Everybody have a good one, and I will see you on Wednesday. Thank you for joining me on the Artist Eye Podcast. See you later.